Ikigai, finding your purpose. Have you ever stopped and wondered, what's my purpose? It's a question that pops up for most of us at some point. Life is full of possibilities, so many careers, paths, and opportunities. But figuring out what we truly want to do can feel overwhelming. Society often pushes us to make big decisions about our future when we're still young, sometimes before we even understand what adulthood really looks like. And let's be honest, even as adults, many of us still feel lost about what we're meant to do. This is where the Japanese concept of Ikigai comes in. Ikigai, pronounced Ikigai, translates to reason for being, or reason to wake up in the morning. It's about finding that sweet spot where what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for all come together. When you find your Ikigai, you're not just working, you're living with purpose, passion, and joy. It's like being in a state of flow, where time flies because you're so immersed in what you're doing. But let's be real. Many people aren't living their Ikigai. Instead, they're stuck in jobs they hate. You know the feeling. That Sunday evening dread, counting down the hours until Monday morning rolls around. You drag yourself out of bed, go through the motions, and spend the day watching the clock, waiting for the next break or the end of the workday. It's exhausting, and it's no way to live. Doing something you dislike isn't just bad for you, it's also a disservice to the people around you. Think about it. If you're miserable at work, it's hard to bring your best self to the table. Meanwhile, you might see coworkers who genuinely enjoy their work, thriving and excelling. It's a tough pill to swallow. Over time, this kind of dissatisfaction can take a toll on your mental and physical health. Some people even spiral into depression or feel like they've failed at life. But here's the good news. We have the power to change our circumstances. It starts with shifting our mindset and then taking steps to align our lives with what truly matters to us. This is where Ikigai comes in. It's a guide to help us find that balance. Ikigai is made up of 4 key dimensions. Let's break them down one by one with some examples to make it clearer. First, doing what you're good at. We all have unique talents and skills. Some of these come naturally, while others are developed over time through practice and experience. For example, maybe you're a natural problem solver, great at fixing things around the house, or you have a knack for calming people down when they're upset. Or perhaps you've spent years honing a skill, like playing the piano, coding, or cooking. The tricky part is that many of us focus on improving our weaknesses instead of leaning into our strengths. Think about it. If you're naturally good at writing but terrible at math, why spend all your energy trying to become okay at math when you could become an amazing writer? When you focus on what you're already good at, you have the potential to excel and make a real impact. For instance, someone who's great at organizing might thrive as an event planner, while someone with a talent for storytelling might find fulfillment as a novelist or filmmaker. Dusra, doing what you love. This one seems obvious, but it's not always straightforward. Loving what you do doesn't mean every single aspect of it has to be enjoyable. For example, let's say you dream of being a musician. You might love performing and writing songs, but hate the business side of things, like promoting your music or managing finances. That's normal. The key is to find ways to make the less enjoyable parts more bearable, or even outsource them if possible. Sometimes, though, You might realize that what you thought you loved isn't actually fulfilling. Maybe you thought you wanted to be a lawyer because it seemed prestigious, but now you find the work draining and uninspiring. That's okay. It's never too late to pivot and explore something else. Your gut instinct is a powerful guide here. If something lights you up, even if it's not practical by society standards, it's worth exploring. Doing what the world needs. This is where purpose comes into play. It's not enough to just do what you love and what you're good at. Your work should also contribute to the world in some way. The great thing is, the world needs all kinds of things. For example, someone who loves working with their hands might find purpose as a carpenter, building furniture that brings joy to people's homes. Or someone who's passionate about the environment might work in renewable energy, helping to combat climate change. Even jobs that might seem small or overlooked are incredibly important. Think about garbage collectors, plumbers, or teachers. These roles are essential to keeping society running smoothly. If you find joy in one of these fields, that's amazing. The key is to align your skills and passions with something that makes a positive impact. Nanga, doing what you can get paid for. Let's be honest, money matters. While it's not the most glamorous part of the equation, it's a practical necessity. If you're doing something you love and that the world needs, but it doesn't pay the bills, it's hard to sustain that passion long term. For example, you might love painting, but if you can't sell your art or find a way to monetize it, you'll likely need another job to support yourself. That's why finding a balance is crucial. Think of money as the fuel that keeps your passion alive. It's not about chasing wealth for its own sake, but about creating a sustainable lifestyle that allows you to keep doing what you love. For instance, a graphic designer might love creating art, but also needs to find clients who value their work enough to pay for it. When you can align your passion with a way to earn a living, you're one step closer to finding your Ikigai. How it all comes together. Now, let's talk about how these four dimensions interact. Each one overlaps with the others, and it's in those overlaps that we find different aspects of a fulfilling life passion. When you do what you love and what you're good at, you have passion. For example, a chef who loves cooking and has mastered their craft might feel passionate about creating new recipes. But passion alone isn't enough. It might not pay the bills or serve a greater purpose. Mission. When you do what you love and what the world needs, you have a mission. For instance, a teacher who loves working with kids and believes in the importance of education has a mission. But if they're not getting paid enough or aren't great at teaching, it might not be sustainable. Vocation. When you do what the world needs and what you get paid for, you have a vocation. For example, a nurse who works in a hospital is fulfilling a need and earning a living. But if they don't love their job or aren't particularly skilled at it, it might feel like just a job, not a calling. Profession. When you do what you're good at and what you get paid for, you have a profession. For instance, a software engineer who's great at coding and earns a good salary has a profession. But if they don't love their work or feel it's meaningful, it might feel empty and exhausting. Your Ikigai is where all four dimensions meet. It's the intersection of passion, mission, vocation, and profession. For example, a social worker who loves helping people, is great at listening and problem solving, sees their work as meaningful, and earns enough to live comfortably, is living their Ikigai. They're in a state of flow, where their work feels effortless and fulfilling. Finding your Ikigai isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing journey. Life changes, and so do we. What feels like your purpose at 25 might not feel the same at 40, and that's okay. The key is to stay curious, keep exploring, and adapt as you grow. Think of it like tending to a garden. You plant seeds, nurture them, and adjust as needed to help them thrive. And remember, it's not about perfection. Even if you're not living your Ikigai right now, small steps can make a big difference. Maybe it's taking a class to explore a new skill, volunteering to see if a certain field resonates with you, or simply reflecting on what brings you joy. Every step counts. Kitsugi. Embrace the imperfection. Imagine having a beautiful vase decorating your living room. It's not just any vase. It's a genuine 19th century hand-painted piece of porcelain from Japan's Satsuma province. One day, your neighbor's dog sneaks into your garden, bounds into your living room, and with an enthusiastic leap, knocks over the vase, shattering it into pieces. You're devastated. This vase wasn't just a decoration. It was a cherished piece of history, a treasure. But then, your neighbor, a wise Japanese elder, offers to help. Using gold lacquer, she carefully mends the broken pieces. The result? The vase is whole again, but the cracks are still visible, highlighted by golden lines. The vase now tells a story. It's been broken, repaired, and transformed. The golden seams aren't flaws. They're part of its beauty. This art of repairing broken pottery with gold is called Kitsugi, and it's more than just a technique. It's a profound philosophy. Kitsugi teaches us to appreciate imperfection, accept transience, and cherish the beauty of things that have been broken and repaired. It's a metaphor for how we can approach our own lives. In a world obsessed with perfection, where flaws are hidden and broken things are discarded, Kitsugi invites us to see beauty in what's scarred, cracked, and imperfect. The practice of Kitsugi dates back to the late 15th century. Legend has it that when the shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa broke his favorite tea bowl, he was dissatisfied with the crude repairs using metal staples. He asked his artisans to find a more elegant solution. They came up with the idea of using gold lacquer to mend the broken pieces, giving birth to Kitsugi. This shift from metal staples to gold lacquer wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a revolution in how we view damage and repair. Instead of seeing something broken as worthless, Kitsugi allows us to see the fractures as part of the object's story. The golden seams tell a tale of resilience, of something that was broken but is now whole again, more beautiful for having been repaired. Kitsugi isn't just about pottery. It's a way of looking at the world. In a society obsessed with perfection, where flaws are hidden and broken things are thrown away, Kitsugi challenges us to embrace imperfection. It teaches us that cracks and scars aren't marks of shame. They're testaments to transformation, resilience, and the natural course of life. Think about your favorite pair of jeans. Over time, they've developed holes, faded patches, and frayed edges. But those imperfections make them uniquely yours. They tell the story of where you've been, what you've done, and the memories you've made while wearing them. In the same way, the cracks in a Kitsugi repaired vase tell its story. They're not flaws. They're part of its history. Kitsugi is closely tied to the Japanese concept of wabi sabi, which celebrates the beauty of imperfection impermanence, and simplicity. Wabi-sabi invites us to find beauty in things that are weathered, worn, and touched by time. It's the appreciation of a chipped teacup, a weathered wooden bench, or the wrinkles on a loved one's face. For example, imagine an old oak tree in a park. Its bark is rough and gnarled, its branches twisted and uneven. But those imperfections make it beautiful. They tell the story of the storms it's weathered, the seasons it's endured, and the life it's supported. In the same way, Kitsugi teaches us to see beauty in the cracks and scars of our own lives. So, how can we apply the philosophy of Kitsugi to our own lives? Here are a few examples. Relationships. Every relationship has its ups and downs. There are moments of misunderstanding, conflict, and hurt, but those challenges can make the relationship stronger. Instead of hiding the cracks, we can embrace them as part of the relationship story. Like a Kitsugi repaired vase, a relationship that's been through tough times can be more beautiful for having been repaired. Personal growth. We all have scars, physical, emotional, or psychological. Maybe you've struggled with anxiety, gone through a difficult breakup, or faced a career setback. Those experiences have shaped you. Instead of hiding your scars, you can wear them with pride. They're a testament to your resilience and strength. Creativity. Think about a painting or a piece of music. The imperfections, the brushstrokes that aren't quite even, the notes that aren't perfectly in tune, are what make it unique. They give it character and depth. In the same way, the imperfections in your own creative work can make it more beautiful. Another Japanese concept related to Kitsugi is mono no aware, which translates to the pathos of things. It's the awareness of the impermanence of all things and the gentle sadness that comes with it. Kitsugi reminds us that everything, people, objects, relationships, is transient. The cracks in a Kitsugi repaired vase are a reminder that it was once broken, but also that it's been made whole again. For example, think about a favorite childhood toy. Over time, it's been worn down, scratched, and maybe even broken. But those imperfections make it special. They remind you of the hours you spent playing with it, the memories you made, and the love you had for it. In the same way, the cracks in a Kitsugi vase remind us of its history and the care that went into repairing it. Kitsugi is also a metaphor for resilience. It's about taking something broken and making it whole again, not by hiding the cracks, but by highlighting them. Think about a city that's been through a natural disaster. Instead of erasing the scars, the city can rebuild in a way that honors its history and shows its strength. For example, after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, the city of Sendai rebuilt in a way that celebrated its resilience. The scars of the disaster weren't hidden. They were incorporated into the city's new identity. In the same way, Kitsugi teaches us to embrace our own scars and see them as part of our story. In a world that often values perfection above all else, Kitsugi offers a refreshing perspective. It reminds us that beauty lies in imperfection, that cracks and scars are part of life, and that what's broken can be made whole again. It's a philosophy that encourages us to embrace our flaws, celebrate our resilience, and find beauty in the imperfect. So the next time you see a crack in a vase, a scar on your skin, or a flaw in your life, remember the art of Kitsugi. Instead of hiding it, embrace it. Let it tell your story. Because in the end, it's the cracks that make us beautiful. Ichigo ichie, One time, one meeting. One rainy afternoon in Shibuya, a woman hurried through the narrow streets of the Gion district, her mind clouded with stress and anxiety. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Emails from clients, reminders of deadlines, and messages from her team demanding her attention. She glanced at her watch. She was late for an important client meeting and needed to catch the next train, or she'd risk losing the account. The rain poured down, soaking her coat, and the sound of distant temple bells mingled with the chatter of tourists and the clatter of wooden geta sandals on the cobblestones. Just before reaching the station, she checked her watch again and realized she'd already missed her train. Defeated, she sighed and leaned against a nearby wall, letting the rain wash over her. Then she noticed a small, cozy tea shop tucked away in an alley. The warm glow from its windows beckoned her inside. On a whim, she stepped in and ordered a bowl of matcha tea. As she took the first sip, something shifted. The rich, earthy flavor filled her senses, and for a moment, everything else faded. The stress, the deadlines, the missed train. All that mattered was the warmth of the tea in her hands and the quiet serenity of the tea shop. This moment captures the essence of Ichigo ichie, a Japanese concept that roughly translates to one time, one meeting, or this moment only. It's the idea that every moment is unique and will never happen again. Yet, so often, we're so caught up in our worries about the future or regrets about the past that we miss the beauty of the present. We sleepwalk through life, lost in our thoughts, unaware of the world around us. We might sit on a train, oblivious to the stunning landscapes passing by, because we're preoccupied with something a coworker said days ago. Before we know it, we've squandered moments that will never return. The concept of Ichigo ichie has its roots in the Japanese tea ceremony. In the 16th century, the tea master Sen no Rikyu emphasized the importance of valuing the present moment. He coined the phrase Ichigo ni ichido, meaning one time, one lifetime, to highlight the uniqueness of each gathering. Even if the same people meet again, each encounter is different, shaped by the specific time, place, and mood. Later, in the 19th century, Naosuke, a tea ceremony grandmaster and political figure, formalized the term Ichigo ichie. Facing constant threats of assassination, Naosuke treated every tea ceremony as if it might be his last. He believed that each gathering was a once-in-a-lifetime event, never to be repeated. He wrote, "Great attention should be given to a tea gathering, which we can speak of as one time, one meeting. Even though the host and guests may see each other often socially, one day's gathering can never be repeated exactly. Viewed this way, the meeting is indeed a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. In other words, every moment is precious because it's fleeting. The past and future are illusions. The only thing that's real is the present. As Eckhart Tolle put it, there is never a time when your life is not. Life happens now. Even when we're lost in thoughts about the past or future, those thoughts are happening in the present. When we're stuck in our thoughts, we miss out on life. The woman in Shibuya could have been consumed by her worries. Fear of missing her train, the stress of an important meeting, or the pressure of her responsibilities. But instead, she chose to savor the matcha tea, grounding herself in the present. This is the power of Ichigo ichie. It reminds us to fully experience the here and now. We often let our thoughts spoil the moment. There have been times when we've been so lost in our heads that we missed entire scenes in a movie, or failed to appreciate the beauty of a walk in the park. It's like being offered a treasure, but being too distracted to see it. We weren't aware of Ichigo ichie, that every moment we let slip away was gone forever. Imagine life as a river. We're floating along, passing countless scenes, trees, mountains, cities, and other people drifting in the same direction. Our position in the river is always changing. The sights we see will never appear again. One day, we're surrounded by friends and laughter. The next, we're alone, drifting in silence. We might look back and long for those carefree college days or the early days of a relationship. Did we take those moments for granted? Did we let worry or the desire for something better overshadow the joy of what was right in front of us? The truth is, nothing lasts forever, not the good times, not the bad. As the Sufi story goes, a king sought wisdom and was given a ring inscribed with the words, "This too shall pass." Whether we're experiencing joy or hardship, the ring reminds us that everything is temporary. This awareness is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's bittersweet to know that the moments we cherish won't last. On the other, it's comforting to know that the painful moments will also fade. If so, how can we practice Ichigo ichie in our daily lives? Here are a few examples. Savoring a meal. Instead of eating while scrolling through your phone or watching TV, take a moment to truly taste your food. Notice the flavors, textures, and aromas. Whether it's a simple bowl of rice or a gourmet dish, let it be a moment of mindfulness. Walking in nature. Next time you take a walk, leave your phone in your pocket. Notice the trees, the birds, the way the sunlight filters through the leaves. Even in a city, there's beauty to be found. The architecture, the sounds, the people. Conversations. When talking to someone, really listen. Put aside your thoughts about what you'll say next or what happened earlier in the day. Be fully present with the person in front of you. Everyday moments. Even mundane activities, like washing dishes, folding laundry, or waiting for a bus, can become opportunities for mindfulness. Instead of rushing through them, try to experience them fully. We often chase grand, once-in-a-lifetime experiences, visiting the Great Wall of China, skydiving, or attending a major event like the World Cup. But according to Ichigo ichie, everything is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. A quiet dinner with your family, a walk with your dog, or even the way the light falls on your living room floor. These moments are just as precious, if not more so, than the big adventures. With enough attention and appreciation, the simplest things can become deeply meaningful. Life is a series of fleeting moments, each one unique and unrepeatable. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, and the only thing we truly have is the present. Ichigo ichie reminds us to cherish each moment, to be fully present, and to find beauty in the ordinary. It's not about chasing perfection or grand experiences. It's about appreciating what's right in front of us. So, the next time you find yourself lost in thought, take a deep breath and look around. Notice the sights, sounds, and sensations of the present moment. Whether it's the taste of your favorite snack, the sound of laughter, or the warmth of the sun on your skin, let it remind you this moment is a gift, and it will never come again. Wabi sabi. The art of finding beauty in the imperfection. In today's world, the pursuit of perfection has become the norm. We're constantly bombarded with images of flawless faces, sculpted bodies, and seemingly perfect lives. Advertisements show us happy, beautiful people, living in pristine homes, enjoying exotic vacations, and surrounded by love and success. These images scream at us, this is how your life should be. And so, we chase this ideal, spending our time, money, and energy trying to mold ourselves and our lives into something flawless. We want the perfect body, the perfect partner, the perfect home, the perfect career, a life without a single flaw. But this pursuit is not only exhausting, it's also unnatural. According to the Japanese worldview of wabi-sabi, perfection is an illusion. Instead, wabi-sabi invites us to embrace the beauty of imperfection, impermanence, and simplicity. It's a philosophy that can help us step off the hamster wheel of perfectionism and learn to appreciate life as it is, perfectly imperfect. The roots of wabi-sabi can be traced back to the Japanese tea ceremony. In the 15th century, the ruling classes loved to flaunt their wealth by using ornate Chinese teacups and holding ceremonies under the full moon. But Zen monk Murata Shuko sought to transform the tea ceremony into something simpler and more meaningful. He replaced the elaborate Chinese cups with humble, handmade Japanese ones and shifted the focus from opulence to mindfulness. Over time, the tea ceremony evolved further. Instead of waiting for a full moon, participants began to gather under a partial or clouded moon. The ceremony became a celebration of simplicity, impermanence, and the beauty of imperfection. This shift is one of the earliest examples of wabi-sabi in action. But what is wabi-sabi? Defining wabi-sabi isn't easy. The meanings of the words wabi and sabi have changed over time. Today, wabi refers to things that are simple, rustic, and imperfect, like a handmade clay bowl with uneven edges. Sabi refers to the beauty that comes with age, the patina on an old bronze statue, the cracks in a weathered wooden table, or the fading colors of autumn leaves. At its core, wabi-sabi is about finding beauty in the imperfect, the incomplete, and the transient. It's not a philosophy you can fully explain in words. It's something you experience. Imagine walking through a forest and noticing the gnarled roots of an ancient tree, the moss-covered stones, or the way sunlight filters through the leaves. That moment of awe and connection, that's wabi-sabi. The pursuit of perfection is like chasing a mirage. No matter how close we get, it always seems to slip away. We want flawless skin, a spotless home, a career without setbacks, and relationships without conflict. But these ideals exist only in our minds. In reality, life is messy, unpredictable, and ever-changing. Think about it. Even if we achieve something close to perfection, it's impossible to maintain. A perfectly tidy living room is ruined by a single speck of dust. A flawless face will eventually show signs of aging. A near-perfect relationship will still have moments of misunderstanding. As the ancient philosopher Lao Tzu said, it is easier to carry an empty cup than one that is filled to the brim. The more we try to hold on to perfection, the more fragile and exhausting it becomes. This relentless pursuit often leaves us feeling inadequate, anxious, and burned out. We're constantly comparing ourselves to impossible standards, and the fear of falling short can be paralyzing. It's like trying to keep a pond perfectly still while the wind, rain, and natural currents keep stirring it up. No matter how hard we try, the water will never remain perfectly calm. Wabi-sabi teaches us to let go of the need for perfection and instead find beauty in the imperfect and transient. This doesn't mean we stop striving to improve ourselves or our lives. It simply means we do so without the pressure of achieving an unattainable ideal. For example, imagine you're painting a picture. Instead of obsessing over every brushstroke and trying to create a flawless masterpiece, you allow yourself to enjoy the process. You embrace the smudges, the uneven lines, and the unexpected colors that emerge. The result might not be perfect, but it's uniquely yours, a reflection of your creativity and humanity. Or think about an old, well-loved book. The pages might be dog-eared, the cover worn, and the spine cracked. But these imperfections tell a story. They show that the book has been read, cherished, and lived with. In the same way, the wrinkles on our faces, the scars on our bodies, and the mistakes we've made are all part of our story. They make us who we are. So, how can we bring wabi-sabi into our daily lives? Here are a few examples. Your home. Instead of striving for a picture-perfect interior, create a space that feels lived in and authentic. Keep the furniture you love, even if it's a bit worn. Decorate with natural elements like driftwood, seashells, or potted plants. Let your home reflect your life, not a magazine spread. Your relationships. Accept that no relationship is perfect. There will be misunderstandings, disagreements, and moments of frustration. But these imperfections are part of what makes relationships meaningful. It's through navigating challenges together that we grow closer. Your self-image. Instead of obsessing over flaws, focus on what makes you unique. Maybe you have a crooked smile, a scar, or a quirky laugh. These imperfections are what make you you. Celebrate them. Nature. Spend time in nature and observe its beauty. Notice the asymmetry of tree branches, the way moss grows on rocks, or the changing colors of the seasons. Nature doesn't strive for perfection. It simply is. And in its imperfection, it's breathtaking. Wabi-sabi reminds us that life is fleeting and imperfect, and that's okay. It encourages us to slow down, appreciate the present moment, and find joy in the simple, everyday things. As author Beth Kempton writes in her book, Wabi-sabi, Japanese wisdom. For a perfectly imperfect life, wabi-sabi gives us permission to be ourselves. It invites us to do our best without making ourselves sick in pursuit of an unattainable ideal. One way to practice wabi-sabi is through forest bathing, a Japanese practice of slowly walking through the forest and immersing yourself in its beauty. Instead of rushing from one place to another, you take your time, noticing the textures, sounds, and smells around you. This practice helps you reconnect with the natural world and reminds you that imperfection is not something to fear. It's something to cherish. In a world that constantly tells us we're not enough, wabi-sabi offers a refreshing perspective. It reminds us that beauty lies in the imperfect, the incomplete, and the transient. It invites us to let go of the need for control and instead embrace the flow of life. So, the next time you find yourself striving for perfection, take a step back. Look at the cracks in the sidewalk, the wrinkles on your hands, or the way sunlight filters through the trees. These imperfections are not flaws. They're reminders of the beauty and complexity of life. And in their own way, they're perfect. The way of Zen. Zen begins at the point where there's nothing left to seek, nothing more to gain. Imagine the human condition as trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. We chase goals that only lead to more goals. We satisfy desires, only to find them returning, often stronger than before. We're caught in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, always searching for that elusive state of ultimate contentment. But no matter how hard we try, it seems just out of reach. Thousands of years ago, the Buddha offered a way out of this cycle. His teachings gave rise to Buddhism, a philosophy and spiritual tradition that has since branched into many schools. One of these schools is Zen Buddhism, which emerged in East Asia and has become known for its unique approach to enlightenment. Buddhism began in India and spread to China around the 1st century. Over time, it evolved into Chan Buddhism, a distinct school of Mahayana Buddhism that emerged in the 6th century. It wasn't until the 12th century that Chan Buddhism made its way to Japan, thanks to a Buddhist priest named Ikigai. Although Eisai's initial efforts to establish Zen in Japan didn't succeed, later disciples managed to plant its roots firmly in Japanese soil. The term Zen is the Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese word Chan, and it's the tradition we'll focus on here. Zen is deeply influenced by Taoism, a Chinese philosophy that emphasizes living in harmony with the natural flow of life. Concepts like Wu Wei, effortless action, from the Tao Te Ching are woven into Zen's fabric. Zen also incorporates elements of Confucianism, another Chinese system of thought. Over time, Zen became an integral part of Japanese culture, shaping practices like the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and even martial arts. Today, Zen is practiced worldwide, alongside other Buddhist traditions like Theravada and Vipassana. But Zen stands out for its unique perspective on enlightenment and how to achieve it. Within Buddhism, there's a distinction between two paths to enlightenment: the gradual and the sudden. The Theravada tradition, popular in the West, teaches that enlightenment, or nibbana, is a gradual process. It requires years of practice, following the Eightfold Path and cultivating mindfulness. Zen, however, takes a different approach. In Zen, enlightenment is often described as a sudden, unexpected experience called satori. It's not something that builds over time. It happens in an instant, like a flash of lightning illuminating the night sky. Imagine a thick layer of clouds blocking the sun. In the gradual approach, the clouds slowly dissipate one by one. In the sudden approach, the clouds are blown away all at once, revealing the clear blue sky. Satori is that moment of clarity, a profound shift in perception where the illusion of a separate, fixed self dissolves. It's a direct realization of the true nature of existence, beyond intellectual understanding. It's like waking up from a dream and seeing reality as it truly is. Zen teaches that the starting point for awakening is the present moment. This is where life happens, where we experience, feel, think, and simply exist. Zen aligns with other traditions like Stoicism and Taoism in valuing the present. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, often wrote about the importance of living in the now, seeing it as a gift. Similarly, Zen emphasizes letting go of the past and future, which are just mental constructs. The present is where reality unfolds, but we often obscure it with our thoughts, worries, and fantasies. Think of it like this. Your mind is like a foggy window. The fog is made up of all your thoughts, judgments, and distractions. Zen practice is about wiping away that fog so you can see clearly. It's about expanding the present moment, letting go of what clouds it, and experiencing life directly. One of the key insights of Zen is the realization that the self, the idea of a separate, enduring me, is an illusion. This doesn't mean you don't exist, but rather that the sense of being a fixed, isolated entity is a mental construct. It's like a whirlpool in a river. It appears to be a distinct thing, but it's just a pattern in the flowing water. The ego, or sense of self, is useful for navigating the world, but it can also trap us in its illusions. For example, imagine you're at a party and you're worried about what others think of you. That worry is the ego at work, creating a barrier between you and the present moment. Zen teaches us to see through this illusion, to let go of the ego's grip, and to experience life without the filter of self-consciousness. Here's where Zen gets tricky. The very act of seeking enlightenment can prevent you from finding it. Why? Because seeking implies that enlightenment is something you don't already have. Zen teaches that Buddhahood, your true nature, is already within you. It's not something to attain, it's something to realize. The problem is that the ego, which is the part of you that seeks, can't grasp this. It's like trying to use a flashlight to see the sun. It's unnecessary because the sun is already shining. This is why Zen masters often use paradoxical statements or koans to help students break free from rational thinking. A classic koan is, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The question isn't meant to be answered logically. It's meant to exhaust the mind's tendency to overthink, so you can experience reality directly. So how do you practice Zen? One common method is Zazen, or seated meditation. The goal of Zazen isn't to achieve a particular state, but to simply sit and be present. It's about letting go of thoughts, judgments, and distractions, and allowing the mind to settle naturally. Over time, this practice can lead to moments of sudden insights into the true nature of reality. Another practice is koan study, where students meditate on paradoxical questions or statements. For example, a monk once asked the Zen master Yoshu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Yoshu replied, "Mu," which means no or nothing. The koan isn't about finding a logical answer. It's about breaking through the mind's habitual patterns of thinking. At its core, Zen is about letting go. Letting go of desires, of the ego, of the need to control or understand everything. It's about trusting the natural flow of life and finding peace in the present moment. Imagine you're holding on to a rope for dear life, dangling over a cliff. Zen teaches you to let go of the rope, not because you want to fall, but because you realize there's no cliff. It was just an illusion created by your mind. Zen is a journey into the heart of reality, a path that leads not to some distant goal, but to the here and now. It's about seeing through the illusions of the mind and experiencing life directly, without filters or distractions. Whether through meditation, koans, or simply being present, Zen offers a way to find peace in the midst of life's chaos. So, the next time you find yourself caught up in worries or desires, take a deep breath and bring your attention to the present moment. Notice the sights, sounds, and sensations around you. Let go of the need to seek or achieve, and simply be. In that stillness, you might just catch a glimpse of the clear blue sky beyond the clouds. The path of a ronin. The Japanese word ronin refers to a samurai without a master, a lone wanderer adrift in the world. The status of a ronin varied depending on the time period, but generally, it carried a sense of failure. Specifically, a ronin was someone who had chosen not to perform seppuku. a form of ritual suicide that samurai used to restore their honor after a defeat. By refusing seppuku, these samurai became outcasts, living with a reputation of disgrace. Some ronin turned to mercenary work or became bodyguards, while others fell into crime. One of the most famous ronin in history is Miyamoto Musashi, often celebrated as Japan's greatest swordsman. He was undefeated in over 60 duels and became a ronin after surviving the Battle of Sekigahara, where he had fought for General Hideyori. Beyond his skill with the sword, Musashi was also a philosopher, artist, and a deeply learned Buddhist. Before his death, he left behind a set of 21 principles called Dokodo, or the path of aloneness. These principles were meant to guide those who walk their own path, and they remain incredibly relevant today, even though the age of the samurai has long passed. 1. Accept everything just the way it is. In his book, The Book of Five Rings, Musashi explains the way of the warrior through the art of sword fighting. What becomes clear is that this way is a lifelong practice, a continuous journey of growth. From a Buddhist perspective, this practice begins with acceptance, accepting things as they are, without resistance. We can't improve if we aren't willing to start as beginners. For example, meditation teaches us to accept the present moment, even if it's uncomfortable. This acceptance strengthens the mind. Musashi takes this idea further by urging warriors to resolutely accept death. In traditional Japanese culture, death wasn't just inevitable, it was an honorable fate, especially when living would mean disgrace. The act of seppuku, for instance, was seen as a way to restore honor after failure. Now, to the modern Western mind, this might seem extreme, but the idea of accepting death can help us come to terms with our own mortality. In Buddhism, there's even a practice called corpse meditation, where one contemplates death by imagining or being near a dead body. This practice helps people face the reality of death and let go of fear. For a ronin, acceptance also means embracing solitude. Musashi, for example, walked a solitary path, perfecting his skills without the support of a master or school. To thrive in such a life, one must accept being alone. It's not easy, but it's necessary. 2. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Despite his status as a ronin, Musashi valued virtue over pleasure. He could have chosen a life of crime or mercenary work, but instead, he dedicated himself to spiritual growth, mastering the art of the sword and serving the greater good. For him, pleasure was never the goal. It was, at most, a side effect of living virtuously. The idea of virtue changes over time, but at its core, it's about doing what's good for the world, not just what feels good in the moment. Pleasure-seeking, on the other hand, is about chasing temporary gratification, like indulging in rich food, entertainment, or other sensory delights. Musashi's approach aligns with Stoic and Buddhist philosophies, which emphasize restraint and moderation. The Stoics, like Epictetus, believed that abstaining from pleasure leads to greater long-term satisfaction than giving in to it. Similarly, Buddhists see sensual pleasure as a kind of itch-scratching. It might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't solve the deeper problem. In fact, it can make things worse, pulling us away from what truly matters. For a ronin, avoiding the trap of pleasure-seeking is crucial. When you're wandering alone, it's easy to get caught up in distractions, good food, entertainment, or other indulgences. But these things can hold you back from the deeper work of self-mastery and spiritual growth. Musashi himself couldn't have perfected his swordsmanship if he'd spent his days chasing fleeting pleasures. 3. Do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. Feelings are important. They tell us something is happening, but they're not always reliable guides for decision-making. The problem is that feelings are often based on irrational thoughts or incomplete information. Acting on them can lead to poor choices and even destructive outcomes. Instead, Musashi suggests relying on rational thinking, logic, and clear observation. Before making a decision, it's important to assess the situation calmly and objectively. Are you acting out of anger, fear, or some other strong emotion? If so, it's better to pause, let the emotion settle, and then reassess with a clear mind. This principle is especially important in high-stakes situations, like a battle or a duel. Approaching an enemy with a clear mind is far more effective than charging in with raw emotion. Emotions can cloud your judgment and lead to mistakes. For a ronin, mental clarity is a survival skill. 4. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Musashi was both a lethal warrior and a deeply humble man. He understood his own insignificance in the grand scheme of things and was willing to serve the greater good. Thinking lightly of yourself means recognizing that you're not the center of the universe. Yes, you matter as a human being, but if you were gone tomorrow, the world would keep spinning. When you compare yourself to the vastness of the universe, it's hard to take yourself too seriously. We're small, fragile, and utterly dependent on the world around us. Humility, then, is not just a virtue. It's a realistic way of seeing yourself in relation to the bigger picture. For a ronin, this humility is essential. Walking alone in the world can be a humbling experience. It reminds you of your vulnerability and your place in the grand scheme of things. By keeping your ego in check, you avoid delusions of grandeur and stay grounded in reality. Desire and aversion are two sides of the same coin. If you're avoiding something, it's because you desire to avoid it. The problem with desire is that it ties your happiness to things outside your control. And since the external world is unpredictable, this is a risky way to live. Musashi's approach to desire is deeply Stoic. The Stoics believed that true happiness comes from within, not from external circumstances. Similarly, Buddhists see attachment, the clinging to desires, as the root of suffering. When you're attached to something, you're essentially saying, I need this to be happy. But that's a fragile foundation for happiness. Musashi reminds us that everything we need is already within us. External things, wealth, status, possessions, are unreliable. What matters is how we act and how we respond to the world. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it, the things within our control are free and unhindered, while the things outside our control are weak and uncertain. For a ronin, detachment from desire is a survival skill. When you're wandering alone, you can't afford to be weighed down by cravings or attachments. They'll only distract you from your path. 6. Do not regret what you have done. Self-reflection is important. It helps us learn from our mistakes and grow as people. But dwelling on past mistakes, beating yourself up over them, doesn't help anyone. At some point, you have to let go and move forward. Sometimes, what seems like a bad decision in the moment can turn out to be a blessing in disguise. Mistakes teach us valuable lessons and help us become more empathetic and cautious. As the Dalai Lama said, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. For a ronin, regret is a heavy burden. When you're walking alone, you need to stay light on your feet. Carrying the weight of past mistakes will only slow you down. Learn from them, yes, but don't let them define you. 7. Never be jealous. When you're a ronin, an outcast, a wanderer, it's easy to feel jealous of others. You might envy people who have homes, families, or wealth. But jealousy is a destructive emotion. It's based on wanting what others have, and that desire only leads to pain. For a ronin, jealousy is a distraction. When you're walking your own path, you can't afford to waste energy comparing yourself to others. Your focus should be on your own actions and your own growth. As Musashi knew, the only thing you truly control is yourself. Everything else is out of your hands. 8. Never let yourself be saddened by a separation. Separation is a natural part of life. It can happen in many ways, temporarily, like when someone moves away or travels, or permanently, like when someone passes away. We can also feel separated from objects, like losing a cherished possession or money. For most of us, separation brings pain because we're attached to what we've lost. We feel a sense of lack, as if something that belonged to us has been taken away. But in Buddhism, this idea of possession is seen as a kind of delusion. Buddhists believe we don't truly own anything, not even our bodies, since we don't fully control them. Musashi, as a ronin and a Buddhist, likely understood this. His life was one of solitude and constant practice, and he couldn't afford to be weighed down by the sadness of separation. Life is full of comings and goings. People, places, and possessions are all temporary. For a ronin, who was always on the move, attachment would have meant constant grief. Instead, Musashi embraced the impermanence of life. In his Book of Five Rings, he wrote that the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. For a warrior, death is always close. Whether it's the death of an enemy, a comrade, or even the risk of their own death. By accepting the inevitability of death and the fleeting nature of life, we can face separation with greater ease. 9. Resentment and complaint are appropriate. Neither for oneself nor others. It's easy to fall into the trap of resentment and complaint. Many people spend a lot of time criticizing the world, pointing out its flaws, and lamenting how things should be. But when we're constantly resentful or complaining, we're focusing on others rather than ourselves. For someone dedicated to a life of practice, like Musashi, this kind of negativity is a distraction. The truth is, the world is beyond our control. People will act in ways that don't align with our values. They'll be foolish, rude, or ungrateful. Life isn't fair. Some people are born with more advantages than others. Trying to change the world to fit our ideals is a noble goal, but it's also an uphill battle. Nature itself often works against us. From a Buddhist perspective, it's wiser to focus on ourselves rather than trying to change the world. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius put it, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Instead of resenting what is, we can accept it and focus on living the best life we can. 10. Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love. On one end, there's agape, selfless, unconditional love. On the other, there's eros, romantic or passionate love, driven by desire. Musashi seems to be warning against the latter. Romantic love, as it's often celebrated today, can be all-consuming. It's seen as something divine, worth pursuing at all costs. But Musashi, as a Buddhist, would have been wary of this. Romantic love and lust can be incredibly distracting. They can cloud our judgment and pull us away from our path. When we're guided by these intense emotions, we risk making unwise decisions. Whether it's neglecting our work, crossing personal boundaries, or even acting violently. Instead of being swept away by love or lust, Musashi advises us to stay grounded and rational. By keeping a clear mind, we can stay focused on our purpose and avoid the pitfalls of being led astray by our emotions. 11. In all things, have no preferences. Preferences can be tricky. When we like something, we're happy. When we don't, we're disappointed. But the problem is, we don't have control over what the world presents to us. By having strong preferences, we give external circumstances power over our mood. If things go our way, we're content. If they don't, we're upset. Musashi encountered all kinds of people and situations in his life, but he maintained a tranquil mind. Strong preferences would have been a distraction, pulling him away from his practice. Instead, he embraced whatever came his way, making the best of every situation. By letting go of preferences, we can stay focused and equanimous, no matter what life throws at us. 12. Be indifferent to where you live. As a ronin, Musashi wandered across Japan, staying in all kinds of places, from castles to caves. But no matter where he was, his focus remained on his path. For many of us, where we live is a big deal. We care about our homes, our neighborhoods, and the things we fill our spaces with. But when we're too attached to our living conditions, we become anxious if they're threatened. Sometimes people believe that moving to a new place will solve their problems. But the truth is, wherever we go, we take ourselves with us. Satisfaction comes from within, not from external circumstances. By being content with where we live, no matter how simple or modest, we free ourselves from unnecessary worry and can focus on what truly matters. 13. Do not pursue the taste of good food. Food is one of life's great pleasures, and many people indulge in it. But Musashi warns against pursuing the taste of good food. The Stoics, too, encouraged simple eating. They believed that when we get used to fancy, elaborate meals, we stop appreciating the simple ones. Overindulgence can lead to gluttony, which harms both our health and our ability to enjoy food mindfully. Instead of chasing after rich, extravagant meals, we can practice eating mindfully and in moderation. By doing so, we weaken our cravings and develop a healthier relationship with food. After all, the purpose of eating is to nourish our bodies, not to satisfy endless desires. 14. Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. Musashi lived a minimalist lifestyle, carrying only what he needed. As a ronin, possessions would have been a burden. Some people collect things, believing that more stuff will make them happier. But often, the opposite is true. The more we own, the more we have to worry about losing what we have or wanting more. In Buddhism, true contentment comes from within, not from external possessions. When we let go of what we don't need, we lighten our load and free ourselves to focus on what truly matters. Like a ronin, we can travel light, unburdened by unnecessary baggage. 15. Do not act following customary beliefs. When we observe human behavior, it's clear that many people tend to follow the crowd. They adhere to societal norms, not because they've thought deeply about them, but simply because everyone else is doing it. Musashi was well aware of the dangers of blind obedience. He likely witnessed the shortcomings of leaders in his time. Whether they were heads of traditional martial arts, schools, politicians, or even the emperor himself, following customary beliefs without question can lead us to abandon our common sense, rational thinking, and even our morality. Just because something is widely accepted doesn't mean it's right. History is filled with examples of people collectively engaging in harmful actions, convinced they were justified. The events of World War II, for instance, show how blindly following a dominant narrative can lead to unimaginable atrocities. Even in everyday life, we see examples of harmful norms. Take alcohol consumption, for instance. In many cultures, drinking is seen as socially acceptable, even though it can be just as destructive as other substances. According to the World Health Organization, alcohol contributes to millions of deaths each year. Yet it's so normalized that choosing not to drink often requires an explanation. Musashi, who lived much of his life as a ronin and a hermit, spent significant time away from society and its norms. This solitude allowed him to observe the world from a distance, free from outside influences. It's a reminder that stepping back from societal pressures can help us think independently and decide what truly serves our well-being. 16. Do not collect weapons or practice with weapons beyond what is useful. Musashi carried two swords, a long one and a short one, not to show off, but because he was skilled in using both. In his Book of Five Rings, he explains that each weapon has its unique purpose. For example, a companion sword is ideal for close combat, while spears and halberds are better suited for the battlefield. Musashi advises against collecting or practicing with weapons beyond what's necessary. This principle can be seen as a metaphor for life. Many ambitious people fall into the trap of overcomplicating things. They engage in unnecessary activities, make excessive investments, or spend too much time networking without making real progress. The key is to focus on what's essential and cut out anything that doesn't serve your goals. At the same time, Musashi warns against becoming too attached to one method or tool. Samurai trained with a variety of weapons, from swords to sticks, to remain adaptable in different situations. As Musashi wrote, you should not have a favorite weapon. To become overfamiliar with one weapon is as much a fault as not knowing it sufficiently well. Success, then, lies in finding a balance, staying focused without becoming rigid. 17. Do not fear death. For a samurai, the awareness of death was central to their way of life. They trained relentlessly, knowing that every duel could be their last. Musashi wrote, "The way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death." By accepting death, a warrior could face battle without fear, empowering them to fight with clarity and determination. But what about us? While most of us aren't facing life or death duels, death is still a universal reality. It's easy to let the fear of death create unnecessary anxiety. Yet worrying about death doesn't change the fact that it's inevitable. As long as we're alive, death isn't a concern. And when we're dead, we won't be around to experience it. In a way, death might even be a release from life's struggles, Instead of fearing death, we can focus on living fully in the present. By accepting the impermanence of life, we free ourselves from the weight of fear and can approach each day with greater clarity and purpose. 18. Do not seek to possess either goods or fiefs for your old age. Musashi lived a minimalist life, focused on honor, skill, and leaving a legacy. He didn't accumulate wealth or property for his later years. In modern terms, this might translate to not sacrificing our present happiness for the sake of future security. While it's important to plan for the future, obsessing over material possessions can lead to stress and dissatisfaction. Buddhism offers a similar perspective. While acquiring wealth isn't inherently wrong, chasing it can exhaust us and harm our well-being. Instead, we might focus on developing inner contentment. If we can find joy in simplicity, we won't need vast riches to feel secure in old age. 19. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. Believing in a higher power doesn't mean we should rely on it to solve our problems. Whether we follow Buddha, God, or another deity, we're still responsible for our own lives. Religions often provide guidelines, like the Christian virtues, the Muslim pillars, or the Buddhist Eightfold Path. But it's up to us to follow them. Praying for help might bring comfort, but it's not a substitute for action. Instead of relying on divine intervention, we can focus on building our own strength, wisdom, and resilience. This way, we're better equipped to handle whatever challenges come our way. 20. You may abandon your own body, but you must preserve your honor. For Musashi, honor was more important than life itself. This idea of honor varies across cultures, but at its core, it's about living with integrity and staying true to one's values. In Musashi's time, surrendering in battle was seen as dishonorable, while dying for a cause was celebrated. Today, we might interpret this principle as a call to prioritize our principles over comfort or convenience. Living with honor means standing by our values, even when it's difficult. It's about doing what's right, even when no one is watching. 21. Never stray from the way. The path of the warrior requires unwavering commitment. Musashi dedicated his life to the way of the sword, transcending everything else, even life and death. In today's world, true commitment can seem rare. Many of us drift from one pleasure to the next, avoiding the harder path of discipline and sacrifice. But if we want to achieve something meaningful, whether it's mastering a skill, building a business, or overcoming a personal challenge, we need to commit fully. Musashi's life is a testament to what's possible when we dedicate ourselves wholeheartedly to a goal. He fought over 60 duels, won them all, and left a legacy that continues to inspire centuries later.